Hey everyone, my name is Nathan Payne. Welcome back to another episode of Blu Ocean Crypto. So I want to talk about the new status effects that are currently in Mavia, but they also gave us a list. There's 15 in total. So I just want to go through them, kind of give you guys my sense of where some of them should be used with things we already have in game, and maybe even try to guess at what some of them are going to be attached to later on. I mean, the ice trap was really the first thing that kind of introduced this and actually has status effects in the game, but you can tell Mavia has a lot of plans for this. So without further ado, let's jump right in.
I want to play.
Okay, so firstly, when you're in game, in order to find the effects list, you basically just have to tap on any structure, and then you hit info, and then up at the top left, it'll show effects. Now, if you do that with the ice trap, and you guys probably seen this on my last video, it actually shows what the effects are. So it has the little icon there. And then when you open it up, it has it highlighted. So it shows cold applied on hit, frozen applied on hit. Now, let's just go over to something else here, because like the flame tower, for example, we would assume this is going to get something, right? So I, of course, assume that it's going to get the burning debuff, because that makes sense. But if there's anything else, maybe hot as well, or melting. Now it's kind of interesting because hot reduces their attack speed, and melting is you receive extra damage if freezing and burning at the same time. So maybe it's like if you've got a flame tower next to an ice trap, the ice trap goes off and the flame tower is getting them. Now it applies melting. That could be kind of interesting. But I just want to go through these. So we'll start with the debuffs, because burning is pretty straightforward. It's damage over time. I think the flame towers are going to do that. We know cold applies to the ice traps. Obviously, the ice towers make sense too. Electrified is interesting though. We don't really have any building right now in game or defensive structure that has anything to do with electricity. Now, it's interesting because if you look back at really old concept photos of Mavia, I thought there looked like something like a Tesla coil there, but when I looked at it again, it actually just more looks like an oil rig, so I don't think I was right. But I wonder if this is going to be something for another defensive structure coming later, because those things seem to be the three main types, right? Burning, cold, electrified. We know what the burning and cold are going to apply to with the towers. We don't know for the electrified yet. Falling's interesting as well. Trip and fall, unable to move or attack for a bit. I wonder if this is going to be maybe a trap that, you know, kind of like Clash of Clans with spring traps. Maybe there's some kind of trap that trips people. Kind of interesting. We know about frozen. Hot, like I said, might have something to do with how cold is being used with frozen. So maybe both of those combined, like burning and hot, kind of apply together. And then the melting, I think, is interesting because you might have to set up combos in order to apply melting. And then stunned makes sense too, right? Become stunned, unable to move or attack for a bit. But we don't have anything that stuns either. So I wonder, is that going to be another defensive building too? Potentially something that stuns, or maybe a trap? Not too sure. Now, let's take a look at the buffs over here, because this is really interesting. Bulletproof. Become immune to bullets from turrets or sniper towers. So that means that this is obviously going to be on a unit, but how are we going to apply a buff to our units? And the only thing I can think about is maybe consumables. Maybe there'll be some consumables that we drop in an area and it applies bulletproof to our troops, or maybe for the duration of an attack or a portion of the attack. I'm really curious how they're going to actually enact these. And then electric proof is kind of similar, but same thing. You know, I kind of think about it, if you've got, let's say we've got some kind of Tesla coil thing or something that does electricity damage and applies electrified. Unless electric proof is for the entire battle, we're probably not going to want to apply it to our units until we're approaching that defense. So maybe there will be a consumable. Maybe these will be cheap kind of consumables that we can start using in battle. I'm not really sure. But that's the only thing that I can guess. Is it kind of similar with fireproof, frostproof, and immovable, right? These all effectively counter some of the debuffs. But are troops just going to come with them? Like, is Thyra going to be just electric proof and that's part of what she does? Or maybe Brute's going to be bulletproof and that's just part of what they do? That could happen too. Maybe some of these buffs are just applied on specific troops for specific troops. Not sure about the consumable thing. I'm kind of reaching a little bit on that, but that's kind of one thing that I do think would be cool is if we could actually have some consumables to use in battle. Because it's kind of similar with the movable. Invisible is interesting because we already have Mirror's invisibility. So I feel like it's kind of the same, but once again, maybe this is a consumable that we drop and there's like a radius where it makes all units invisible in it for a certain time. And same with stun immune. So really, all the buffs all simply counteract the debuffs. There's nothing in here like increased attack speed or increased movement speed, or, you know, these are all effect related. And it does say at the very top, buffs are permanently applied on some units, heroes, or buildings. Now, I kind of wonder, because if this can apply to a building, let's just hypothetically say here that a frost tower or ice tower is naturally frostproof. Well, then that means that maybe there'll be a unit that gets the frozen buff or debuff when it attacks other buildings, like it applies that debuff. Because it wouldn't make sense to freeze the ice tower if it's, you know. So maybe we are going to see a mix of like units and troops starting to get the not only buffs, but the ability to apply debuffs. Because debuffs are applied by an incoming attack. Now, an incoming attack could be from a defensive structure or from a unit. So those are kind of my best guesses with it, is that maybe some of our units are going to have debuffs that they apply when they attack. Maybe some structures are going to be immune to some of that, and also vice versa. Maybe some units are built in with these buffs so that the debuffs don't necessarily apply. And then kind of my other guess is consumables that maybe do something in regards to this. Now, it doesn't make sense to have a consumable like that applies falling, right? So like I think some of these things are going to be specific to traps or buildings. But as far as the buffs go, I feel like it's a lot more open to how these are going to be applied and used and stuff. So I'm very curious about this. I was actually quite surprised that Mavia gave us this whole list instead of just introducing the ice trap. So that's awesome. Curious what you guys think. Let me know. Is there any kind of guesses you guys have? I mean, really, we don't know. We just got this list, right? So I'm totally just guessing, but I think it would be awesome to see some consumables that do some of this stuff. And then I also think it would be awesome if some of the defensive structures, you know, applied debuffs or had buffs on them that kind of counteracted some things with the units. And then maybe even seeing more units, like having a unit that applies electrified, right? Because it says building stops operating for a bit. That tells me that electrified should be something that a unit is applying. Not necessarily, you know, maybe a Tesla coil like I was talking about. So, yeah, it's interesting. You know, I mean, the electrified thing I was guessing was a defensive structure, but even reading this now, because it says building stops, it doesn't say building or unit. So, very interesting. Curious what you guys think. I think this is just an awesome sneak peek at all the effects that are coming in Mavia. Just want to say thanks for everyone who's subscribed to the channel. It really makes a big difference. Do me a favor and smash that like button, and we'll see you all in the next video. Cheers.